The ancient floorboards creaked beneath my feet as I stared in horror at the freshly painted message on my workshop door. "Time's up, Sullivan. Modern homes don't need craftsmen." My grandfather's hand-carved business sign lay shattered at my feet, its pieces still smoking from being set ablaze. Like this video to discover how I turned this act of intimidation into a $700,000 victory against the most corrupt HOA in America. I remember the exact moment I realized my family's legacy was under attack. It was a crisp autumn morning, and I was restoring the crown molding in my great-grandfather's Victorian home, the same home where 4 generations of Sullivans had practiced their woodworking craft. The house stood proudly at the corner of Maple and Pine, its weathered brick facade and intricate wooden details a stark contrast to the sleek, modern homes that had sprouted around it like invasive weeds. The discovery I made that morning changed everything. As I carefully removed a section of damaged molding, a yellowed envelope fluttered to the floor. Inside was my great-grandfather's journal, its pages filled with sketches of the very house I was trying to preserve. To my children's children, the first page read, "In these walls lies not just wood and nails, but the heart of our family's craft." I was still absorbed in the journal when the knock came. Victoria Pierce stood on my porch, her perfectly manicured nails matching the pristine burgundy of her business suit. As the president of the newly formed Oak Ridge Heights Homeowners Association, she had a reputation for turning historic neighborhoods into what she called modern sanctuaries. "Mr. Sullivan," she smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you reconsidered our offer." She held out a glossy brochure showing renderings of glass and steel townhouses. "Your property is the last piece we need to complete our community's transformation. The compensation would be generous." I gestured to the wooden arch above us, its hand-carved roses catching the morning light. "This house isn't just property, Ms. Pierce. Every inch of it tells a story. My great-grandfather built that arch with his own hands. My grandfather taught me how to carve those roses right there in that workshop. We've been creating custom woodwork for this community for over a century." Victoria's smile tightened. "Times change, Mr. Sullivan. Progress is inevitable. Your craft, while charming, doesn't fit our vision for Oak Ridge Heights. The board has concerns about the impact your workshop has on property values. My family was here long before your HOA." I replied firmly. "We're not under your jurisdiction, and we're not selling." She turned to leave but paused. "You know, it's interesting how old houses like this can be hazardous. All that aged wood, ancient electrical wiring. Accidents happen all the time." Her words hung in the air like smoke. That evening, as I worked in my workshop, the journal opened beside me. I noticed movement outside. Through the window, I caught glimpses of people photographing my property. They wore HOA badges. I picked up my great-grandfather's worn leather tool roll, running my fingers over the implements he'd used to build this house. Each tool told a story, carried the weight of generations. In the workshop's quiet, I could almost hear the echoes of my family's history, the tap of hammers, the scrape of planes, the lessons passed from father to son. But now, looking at the journal's weathered pages, I felt a chill. My great-grandfather had fought to build this legacy. Now it was my turn to fight to preserve it. What I didn't know then was just how far Victoria Pierce would go to erase my family's history from Oak Ridge Heights, or how much I would lose before the truth finally came to light. A shadow passed by my window again. This time, I was sure I saw a flash of burgundy. The first signs of trouble came when Mrs. Henderson canceled her dining room restoration. She'd been excited about having me recreate her grandmother's cherished maple cabinets, but now she couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, Michael," she whispered, glancing nervously at her neighbor's house. "The HOA. They said they'd fine me for unauthorized renovations." I knew Victoria Pierce was behind it. In the 3 weeks since her visit, my clients had been disappearing one by one. Each cancellation came with whispered apologies and fearful glances. The HOA had apparently discovered a new bylaw requiring all home improvements to be approved by their architectural committee. My workshop, once filled with the cheerful banner of apprentices and the steady rhythm of work, grew quieter. Jake, my senior apprentice who'd been with me for 5 years, was the last to go. They offered me a job at Pierce Construction, he admitted, shame coloring his face. Double the salary plus benefits. Victoria's husband says they're going to renovate the whole neighborhood. I watched him pack his tools, remembering how proud he'd been when he completed his first solo cabinet. Now another piece of our craft's future was being stripped away. That evening, I sat in my great-grandfather's chair, his journal open in my lap. The pages spoke of similar struggles, fighting to maintain quality craftsmanship in an age of mass production. But even he couldn't have imagined what we face now. The letters started arriving daily, each bearing the HOA's gold seal. Violation notices for peeling paint that wasn't peeling. Complaints about noise from tools that hadn't been used in days. Warnings about the unsafe storage of wood materials in a workshop that had stood safely for a century. One morning, I found a thick envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a document claiming my property had been part of the Oak Ridge Heights development all along. The yellowed paper looked authentic, complete with official stamps and signatures, but I knew it was forged. The date on the document was from a time when my great-grandfather's journal entries clearly showed him building this house on independent land. I took the forgery to Sarah Chun, a local historian who'd helped me research the house's history. Her small office was cluttered with maps and documents, the walls covered in old photographs of the neighborhood. She examined the paper under a magnifying glass, her frown deepening. "This is good work," she murmured. "Professional. But look here. The watermark is wrong for the period in this notary stamp. The office it references wasn't established until decades later." She looked up at me, concern in her eyes. "Michael, this isn't just harassment anymore. This is fraud." On my way home, I noticed an expensive SUV following me. It kept its distance but stayed with me through every turn. The driver's burgundy blazer was unmistakable, one of Victoria's board members. They weren't even trying to hide their surveillance anymore. The final straw came when I arrived at my workshop to find the locks changed. A notice on the door claimed the building was under review for code violations. Through the window, I could see my tools, the projects I've been working on, all held hostage. Generations of craft and care, locked away by people who saw only dollar signs where I saw heritage. I called the police, but they said it was a civil matter. The HOA had filed paperwork claiming jurisdiction, and until a court ruled otherwise, their authority stood. As I stood there, staring at my sealed workshop, a sleek car pulled up. Victoria Pierce stepped out, a sympathetic smile plastered on her face. "This could all go away, Mr. Sullivan," she said softly. "One signature and your troubles disappear. The HOA would even be willing to let you maintain a small workshop in one of our new developments. Under proper oversight, of course." I thought of my great-grandfather's journal, of the legacy he'd built. "You can't steal what's not for sale," I replied. Her smile vanished. "No one's stealing anything, Mr. Sullivan. We're simply bringing this neighborhood into the modern era. Progress is inevitable. The question is, will you be part of it or will you be—" She glanced at my locked workshop. Replaced. As she drove away, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In her car's back seat were canisters, the kind used to store industrial chemicals. And next to them, coiled like a waiting snake, was a length of rubber hose. The security cameras I'd installed went dark at exactly 11:47 p.m. I was in my study, poring over my great-grandfather's journal for any documentation that could help my case, when my phone buzzed with the alert. The live feed showed a final image of 2 figures in dark clothing before cutting to static. Something about their silhouettes seemed familiar. The autumn wind howled outside, rattling the Victorian windows my grandfather had crafted decades ago. I reached for my phone to call the police, but the line was dead. Even my cell phone showed no signal. Something was blocking it. They'd planned this well. A sharp crack echoed from the workshop. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed downstairs, my heart pounding against my ribs. The scent hit me first, sharp, chemical, unmistakable. Gasoline. Their footsteps crunched on gravel as they fled. But I caught a glimpse of burgundy fabric snagging on the workshop's rose-carved gate. Then I saw the flames. They started small, dancing along the workshop's foundation like deadly fireflies. But within seconds, they leaped up the walls my family had built, consuming a century of craftsmanship with terrifying speed. The heat struck me like a physical blow as I ran forward, desperate to save something, anything. I smashed through the workshop side window, the one Victoria's goons had missed. Smoke poured out, thick and black, burning my lungs. Through watering eyes, I could see my great-grandfather's tool roll, still sitting on the workbench where 4 generations of Sullivans had shaped wood into art. The flames were spreading faster now, feeding on decades of sawdust in the walls, devouring the hand-carved beams overhead. I reached for the tool roll, my fingers brushing its worn leather just as a burning beam crashed down beside me. The impact sent me stumbling backward, and something clattered across the floor, a phone, its case marked with the HOA's logo. Someone had gotten careless. I grabbed the phone and the tool roll, then crawled toward the window. The heat was unbearable now, the smoke so thick I could barely see. Behind me, I heard the distinct crack of ancient wood giving way. The workshop's bones were failing. As I tumbled out the window, the night air hit my smoke-scorched lungs like ice water. From the street, I heard screams, neighbors pointing, the distant wail of sirens. But it was too late. The fire had jumped from the workshop to the house, racing up the weathered siding like it was following a fuse. Michael, Sarah Chen's voice cut through the chaos. She lived 2 blocks away and must have seen the flames. "Oh my God! Are you okay?" Before I could answer, another car screeched to a halt. Victoria Pierce stepped out, her face a mask of rehearsed concern. "How terrible," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I told you these old buildings were fire hazards." That's when I saw it. A smudge of soot on her perfectly manicured hand, matching the burns on the burgundy fabric I'd spotted earlier. She must have come to watch her handiwork, not expecting me to survive or notice these details. I clutched the stolen phone tighter. "Funny thing about old buildings, Victoria, I manage between coughs. They have a way of preserving evidence." Her eyes darted to my hand, widening slightly as she recognized the phone. For the first time, fear cracked her polished facade. She took a step back, bumping into a firefighter who had just arrived. "Sir," the firefighter said to me, "we need you to move back. The structure's unstable." As if to emphasize his point, the workshop's roof collapsed with a thunderous roar, sending a column of sparks into the night sky. Each ember carried a piece of my family's legacy, generations of craft and care dissolving into ash. But not everything was lost. I still had my great-grandfather's tools, his journal, and now, most importantly, proof of Victoria's crimes. As I watched my world burn, I made a silent promise to the generations of Sullivans who had built this place. Justice would come, not just for our family, but for every person Victoria and her HOA had tried to bully and destroy. Through the flames, I saw her slip away, phone already to her ear. She was calling someone, her movements urgent, panicked. She didn't realize that her carefully constructed world was about to burn down too, just like my workshop. The courthouse's oak panel walls reminded me of better days in my workshop. As I sat at the plaintiff's table, my great-grandfather's journal and the salvaged tool roll before me like sacred relics, I watched Victoria Pierce's carefully constructed world crumble. The phone I'd recovered from the fire proved to be a gold mine. Messages between Victoria and her board members detailed their campaign of intimidation, but it was the location data that damned them. Timestamps putting 3 HOA members at my property the night of the fire. Their own technology had betrayed them. The evidence shows a clear pattern of organized harassment, my attorney Rachel Martinez argued, her voice steady and determined. But it goes deeper than one man's property. The HOA, under Mrs. Pierce's leadership, has systematically targeted historic properties throughout Oak Ridge Heights. That's when Sarah Chun took the stand. She spread out old maps and property records, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice firm. These documents prove the Sullivan property was never part of the HOA's jurisdiction. The papers they produced were forgeries, using techniques I've seen in other cases where historic properties were illegally acquired. Victoria's composure finally cracked when her own board member, Kevin Walsh, turned state's evidence. He'd been the weak link all along, the one who dropped his phone during the fire. Now, faced with arson charges, he spilled everything. Victoria said we needed to make examples. He testified, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The historic district was holding back progress, she said. The fire, it wasn't supposed to spread to the house. We just wanted to destroy his business, force him to sell. I watched Victoria's face as her former ally detailed years of corruption, how they'd falsified building code violations, intimidated residents, and forged documents. The jury learned about secret meetings with developers, kickbacks from construction companies, and a network of fraud that stretched far beyond my property. Your Honor, Rachel said, standing tall, we're not just seeking damages for Mr. Sullivan's losses. We're seeking justice for an entire community that's been terrorized by unchecked power and greed. Victoria's lawyer tried to paint it as a simple property dispute gone wrong, but the evidence was overwhelming. When the jury foreman stood to deliver the verdict, the room held its breath. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Michael Sullivan, and award damages in the amount of $700,000. But it wasn't over. The criminal charges against Victoria and her conspirators would ensure they face more than financial penalties. As she was led away, her burgundy blazer exchanged for handcuffs, I felt no joy, only a deep sadness for how greed had poisoned our community. Months later, I stood in front of my rebuilt workshop. The insurance money and court settlement had allowed me to restore it, but I'd made some changes. The new building honored the past, while embracing the future. Large windows allowed passers-by to watch the craftsmanship inside, and I'd added a small museum corner, displaying my great-grandfather's tools and journal. Sarah helped me organize an apprenticeship program, partnering with the local high school to teach traditional woodworking techniques. Jake, my former apprentice, returned after the trial, humbled and wiser. Together, we were training a new generation to appreciate the value of heritage and honest work. The HOA underwent a complete transformation. The new board, led by community members who understood the value of history, worked to protect historic properties rather than destroy them. They even sponsored our apprenticeship program, turning full circle from destruction to preservation. One morning, as I was teaching a group of students how to hand-carve drawer pulls, Mrs. Henderson appeared at the workshop door. In her hands, she held her grandmother's original cabinet drawings. Is it too late, she asked hesitantly, to restore a piece of family history? I smiled, running my hand along the new workbench, built with wood reclaimed from the fire. It's never too late to preserve what matters, I told her, as my students gathered around to learn. The workshop's new carved sign caught the morning light. Its letters deep and true, Sullivan and Sons, ST 1923, rising from the ashes. Below it, in smaller letters, where heritage lives on. In the end, Victoria's fire hadn't destroyed our legacy. It had forged it stronger. As I watched my students learn the skills my great-grandfather had brought to this corner of the world, I realized that some things can't be burned away. They just find new forms, new hands to shape them, new stories to tell.